So I know what you're thinking. Sean, there's already so many products and so many solutions out there. What do you want me to do? How am I going to find something different? And that's true. I mean, there are so many products out there, but that doesn't mean someone won't buy the same product from you. So by the end of the video, I'm going to tell you guys exactly how I sourced my supplier for my business and what I had to go through in order to get that. And on top of that, from my own learnings, I'm going to give you guys a little checklist so you guys can help identify and figure out how you guys can get a supplier for yourselves if you are looking at starting a business, or just join me on this video to hear about my journey on the suppliers. Now, I'm in the same situation as probably a lot of you guys are. There's other carver products on the market, but the best brands of today don't only sell a simple product. It's not as easy now. You have to sell yourself and you have to be part of that brand. And that's what I'm trying to do with Carver. Finding a supplier in previous years could have been very difficult, but we're in a day and age where we have so much access to global companies and so much access to technology that it's never actually been easier to find a supplier. There's no excuse why you shouldn't start at least looking at this very first stage. So let me start with my journey and how I went about trying to source a supplier. And this was all brand new to me. So I'm bringing this information to you. So hopefully you guys don't make the same sort of mistakes and have a little bit of a head start as to where I had to find a supplier. So as you know, my product is Carver. If you didn't know, please go back and watch a couple of my other videos. But being Fiji Indian, I knew you could bring this in for personal use. My family has been doing this for many years. Every time we go back to Fiji, we bring back a bit of Carver for personal use. But the challenge that I had is, what are the rules and regulations about bringing this in for commercial quantity? I did know that it was banned for commercial quantity quite some time ago, and that ban was lifted, and we're now allowed to bring it back in. But I had to figure out exactly how I could do this. I had to make sure any company that I dealt with fit my little checklist. Number one, stable supply. If you're starting a business and you're hoping that it's going to scale, you have to make sure the company can get stable supply for you. The other part of my checklist was to make sure that it was ethically farmed, ethically sourced, high quality, and of the noble variety of Carver. It's the only Carver that's allowed in Australia, and it's the safest Carver for you. So these were the very first things that I had to ask my supplier. The very first step was research. I knew I wanted Fijian Carver, so that was a very good start. I knew where to get my product from and the country of origin. So I typed into Google, Fijian Carver wholesalers. As simple as that. And that's where the rabbit hole began. First and foremost, I had to distinguish the type of Carver I wanted. There's traditional grind, in which there's a lot of particulates and you have to use a sieve, and it's a very traditional method of preparing it, which is how my family drinks it. And it's also the cheapest. Then there's micronized Carver, which is very, very finely pound up Carver, but there can be still particulates in it. And for me, the drinking experience wouldn't be as good if you could feel graininess and particulates when drinking it. Finally, there's instant Carver, and this is where I landed. For me, there was a big benefit in instant Carver, and it's actually the first time I ever heard of instant Carver. I know there's some on the market, but I wasn't looking into this previously. And instant Carver is essentially made Carver that's re-dehydrated, and when you put it into any solution, it mixes very well, and there's no particulates. Perfect. I found the Carver I wanted. So I emailed about 6 different suppliers, and I quickly found out not many suppliers do instant Carver. Traditional is found everywhere. Instant Carver, a lot harder of a process, more expensive to manufacture, and there was only about 3 companies that ended up being able to do instant Carver. From these, only 2 replied to me. And once they did reply, I was like, fantastic. Very next step was I set up meetings with the CEO of these companies to figure out if the company is going to be a right fit and if they're going to have enough supply and all the other things I previously talked about. So even though this was a while ago, I do have a little checklist that I luckily saved in my notes and had to scroll all the way down for many months ago, but I found my little checklist, and I'm going to read you exactly the questions that I was asking my supplier. So I started with how the company was founded. I think for me, it was super important to figure out exactly the origins of the company and how long they've been around, and are they going to continue to be around in the foreseeable future, especially considering this product isn't made by a whole bunch of suppliers. I needed to make sure that I had stable supply. The next question was, are you HACCP certified for Australia? So this is just a certification to make sure that you follow the food safety standards and all of that stuff. And first 2, tick, tick. Thirdly, is your Carver a noble variety? Noble varieties are the only ones that now are allowed to be sold in Australia. And I mean, they were very aware of this. They already import into Australia, which was my benefit. And yep, tick. Next one was, do you import the product, or do I need a license in to sell it under my own name? And this company, the CEO of this company was so helpful for me. He took me through the whole process of sort of what they do in terms of importing, and really explained that for me to purchase it from him, it's already a domestic product because he takes care of all the importing, which made my life super easy. Importing products is not the easiest task, especially when it's a food product. So make sure you go through, look up all the rules and regulations about importation if you are doing something like that. Whether it's a food, whether it's a good or a toy, there are rules and regulations about it. So please make sure you just research. Understanding the shipping to Australia, or even shipping domestically, right? I needed to make sure that the shipping cost wasn't exorbitant through the roof, and when I ordered my wholesale supply, that it didn't blow my budget out and really reduce my margins. It's super important for me, so I asked the question. Organic certification. Do they have organic certification? In this day and age, to have organic certification is quite a task, but if you can get it, it really shows that the product is truly organic and you can sell it as an organic product. Unfortunately, my product's not organic certified, but that's okay. I don't think any carver on the market is organic certified, and it probably could be, but again, it's another step that you have to take to get that certification, so I haven't worried about it just yet. The next one was, am I able to buy in bulk and repackage it? A lot of brands won't allow you to purchase bulk product and repackage, right? They want to make sure that their product is only associated with their company and their branding. So just make sure you keep an eye out for that one. Look, usually manufacturers are pretty good. Manufacturers and wholesale suppliers are pretty good with this, but doesn't hurt to double check. Next one was current company turnover and the ability to have stock supply. Look, turnover not necessarily as important, but obviously the bigger the turnover, that means the more stock that they're currently having to turn over and having to supply, which sort of shows what their outreach is. But also, are they going to be able to keep up with that demand and supply me? So again, another question I asked. This company was fantastic, and they gave me pure assurances, and I haven't had any issues since. Big one for me was, does your company meet the Australian food standards? Similar to the HACCP certification, but slightly different. Food standards is sort of its own, and because this is technically a food product, it had to be certified with all the Australian food standards, and yes, tick, we're all good there, which is fantastic. Next one was, how long can the carver sit? When carver sits for a long time, it can get a tiny bit of a smell. And also, how they figure out their expiry dates, right? So look, mine are packaged individually, so that also increases the risk, but they are an airtight, sealed little bag. So look, if they are airtight and are sealed, it does exponentially increase the time before it expires. But look, there is an expiry date. Every product has to have an expiry date and a batch number. I'll talk about all that in the next video. But yep, tick, tick, that was all good. Serving doses. How did that come up with the serving doses, right? Serving doses are super important to figure out, one, what your product will look like when you put it into little individual serves, and then extrapolate the cost out. So that was super important. But also, you don't want a product that either tastes too weak or tastes too strong, and doesn't have any effect or has too much effect. So that was important, and we sort of talked that out, and he had some serving doses again. Again, this company was fantastic, guys. Don't skimp out on talking to different companies and different wholesalers. You want to make sure you find the right fit for you, someone that's willing to help you throughout your journey, because you're going to have many questions come up. And if they're inaccessible, they just want to sell you a product and disappear, they're not a good fit. Lastly, samples of the product. Super important. You've got to try the product. So again, this company was absolutely fantastic. I can't stress to you guys enough how good it is to work with a supplier that wants to work with you. And they sent me about 6 different samples of 6 different types of carver, and there was a different couple of countries of origin as well. But again, I landed on a Fijian carver from them, instant version, and here we are, we're good to go. Lastly, what is the pricing structure we can agree on? Super important. You need to make sure you have healthy margins from the get-go. There's going to be so many administration costs, and I'm going to talk about all those in future videos. But so many administration costs that's going to eat into your margins. So at this very first stage, before you don't know any of the other costs, you need to make sure there's a very, very healthy margin on your product. On top of that, you need to make sure when you do break it down and individually pack, or however you're going to sort of resell it onto the market, there has to be a price that the customers are willing to pay. You can't say yes to a product now, have a low margin, and then think to yourself, oh, we really need to improve margin to have some sort of profitability in the long run, and make your product so expensive that no one wants to buy it. So key consideration, obviously one of the first questions you should ask, and sort of do some mapping. Look, through these videos, you'll sort of find out a rough mapping of how much product costs are, and packaging, and all the administration costs. So follow along and you'll have a little bit more of a head start than I did. But yeah, there was a lot of research behind it. And luckily, our product is I guess, look, a little bit more expensive compared to the market, but that's what small business is, right? You're going to start like that, and then you have economies of scale, and slowly you can make that product a little bit cheaper to make it more affordable for your average customer. So if you've stuck with me so far, thank you very much for hearing about my own journey on finding a supplier, but let me help you guys a little bit. So I'm going to give you guys a tiny bit of a checklist on you guys finding your own suppliers, some of the questions you can potentially ask. And look, I can't link anything at the moment. Hopefully in the future, I'll link something down below. But for now, I'm just going to pop these up on the screen for you. So some of these will change depending if you want your own custom branding or your own custom packaging and other variables that I'll talk about in future videos. But look, the first thing is product quality. I'm going to chuck up a couple of things here in terms of product quality for you. Pricing and margins, another one to consider. Reliability and capacity, communication, that's super important. How do we want you to communicate with the supplier? Are they easily accessible by phone? Is it email? Is it WhatsApp? Another consideration. Manufacturing and operations, how that sort of part of the business operates. Shipping and logistics, another big one. Shipping and logistics can cost a lot, especially like locally using Australia Post and those sort of companies. So have a think about all of that, and I'll, again, talk about a lot of that in future videos as well. Payment terms, do you have a lead time? Do you have to pay straight away? I prefer to use credit cards, but a lot of suppliers don't do credit cards. They only do bank transfers, so keep in mind all that sort of stuff as well. Branding and customization, well, once again, are you gonna have your own branding? Are you gonna rely on theirs, or can they just brand the whole thing and put your own customization on their products and just send it straight to you and you're ready to sell? So another thing to consider. Legal and compliance, a little bit of background information for yourself, just to protect yourself in the long run. Depends on what your product is. I mean, typically a toy and non-perishable items don't have as many legal and compliance things around them, but obviously do your research beforehand. You don't want to get caught up in something that you don't want to, so it helps just doing a bit of research. Risk assessment, again, talking about the company and will the company be there in the long run, etc. And long-term partnership potential, right? If you're starting a business, no one starts a business to not want to scale. So if you are going to scale, you want to make sure that you have a great partnership with your supplier, right? You might be together for a long time, so you want to make sure this is good from the get-go. A couple of key questions is, what is your MOQ, which is minimum order quantity? A lot of suppliers will have a minimum order, and if you're starting a small business, you don't know how much you're going to sell up front, so ensure to look at what is the minimum order quantity, because some can be very high, especially if they're coming from international companies. What are your lead times? How long will the product take to get to you? This is also good for future planning. Helps you understand what your stock supply needs to run down to before you get ahead of the curve and make another order. You don't want to be out of stock. If you don't have stock, you're not making any money. Can I order samples? Again, another great one. You want to make sure you have samples on hand. What quality control process do you have? Again, it's all good to get a nice, shiny, fantastic A1 sample, but if they're going to scale it up and there's going to be a whole bunch of errors in it, it's only more headache for yourself. So make sure you sort of ask those questions as well. Have you shipped to Australia before? Another super important one, right? I mean, if they haven't shipped to Australia, you don't know what the costs are, you don't know what the times are, the expectation is. So another big question to ask. What happens if my product arrives defective? You want to have a process in place from the very start. You don't want to get the product and they say, sorry, your fault, your problem. We've got nothing to do with it now. It's in your hands. So again, that relationship with the supplier, but ask these questions up front. You don't want to face that issue when you get to it because it's money, right? It's money in your hands, especially when you start a small business. You don't have the amount of capital that some of these larger businesses have, and you can't write off stock. So make sure you ask these questions. Can you support private labeling? As I said, some companies will be able to do that. Some manufacturers, they'll put your own private labeling on the box and ship it straight to you, so you don't have to bear the cost of that. I don't know if that's actually more expensive or cheaper, but you'll get to see what my sort of private labeling and custom packaging was in the next video. And how do prices change as volume grows? If you are planning to scale the business, I mean, lock something in, right? I mean, they might say, oh yeah, we have a set fee, or if you grow, we're going to figure out a fee together. And that's good. Put the expectation there that obviously you want to grow as a business and you want to help them grow as a business. And if you grow and they're growing with you, what's sort of the reward that you're going to receive for that, right? I mean, at the end of the day, the more product you order, economies of scale, right? The more you order, the cheaper it should become. Finally, I'll leave you with this. I think the biggest mistake people starting a new business is finding the very cheapest supplier and saying, yep, we're good to go. I guess from what you've heard and how passionate I was about the supplier that I have, it's super important to, I mean, obviously price is very important, but you don't necessarily always want to go with the cheapest option. You want to make sure there's a working relationship there. If this is something that you're going to want to do for the long run, you want to make sure that the very first part of your chain isn't a burden. Have a great relationship. If things go wrong, you want to be able to talk to someone and find a middle ground. I don't necessarily think you have to go straight to the most expensive supplier, but just someone that's going to work with you very well. So thank you. If you haven't seen my previous videos, click on the screen now and can't wait for the next one.